Same question to both of you. And Bernarda, we will start with you. Did Alex Murdaugh help or hurt his case taking the stand?
Well, the reaction that really matters is of those 12 jurors, how they accepted Alex Murdaugh or did not accept Alex Murdaugh. In terms of his decision to testify, we saw different versions of Alex Murdaugh. It became the Alex Murdaugh show, where at the majority of the time, he had control of the courtroom, control of his testimony, and control of the cross-examination. But I think the last 20 minutes or so of cross-examination by the prosecution was very helpful in the sense that he was finally confronted that it just does not make sense. His 1,700-acre property that somebody just came and knew the exact time where his son and his wife would be at the kennels and knew that he wouldn't be there and killed them, and the dogs heard nothing, and all of a sudden also his phone goes dead. It's just so many things that are that cannot be a coincidence, but rather that it was Alex Murdaugh that was responsible for their death. But let's see how the jury feels this out.
Well, so Misty, similar question, and I do wonder if anyone's going to remember anything except for Murdaugh testifying. There was a whole lot of trial that was put on before he hit the stand, and I wonder if it's going to matter to the jury. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the defense testifying really steals the show. But remember, what we have coming up later this week, we anticipate, is closing arguments. That's the time where both the prosecution and the defense are going to take all of this information and synthesize it into the narrative, right? They're going to put it into something very digestible for the jury that goes through all of the different evidence in the trial, brings it together, and helps the jury remember some of what we heard earlier in the week. Remember that the jury is not allowed to take notes. That's why closing arguments are so key and so critical, because of course the defense testimony, that's going to be what's fresh in everyone's mind.
Misty, let me ask you about that. Why would the jury not be allowed to take notes?
So this is very often the case. Most courts have this rule. And the reason the jury can't take notes is because they're supposed to be assessing the evidence that comes into the trial from their own memory. They will be allowed, as opposed to taking notes, to rehear certain evidence. They can ask the judge to reread testimony into the record. They can ask the judge to look at different evidence, to look at video, but they cannot take notes because they're supposed to remember it as it happened, as opposed to the way that you might write it down on a piece of paper might not be accurate to what actually occurred in the courtroom.
Wow,
so
okay. Well, I mean, that puts even more emphasis on something so memorable as the defendant testifying. I think we've heard Bernarda believes that there are numerous holes that can be poked in his testimony. Do you agree, though, that the cross-examination here did a fine job of blunting the impact of the defendant testifying? This is for Misty.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I do. I believe that they did, because the cross-examination closed Murdaugh into a box as to the time of when the murder occurred. So they now have him by his own testimony there at 8:44:45, and it's simply unfeasible that somebody could have come in and committed this crime if you buy into the prosecution's time of death, which is 8:49. What I do anticipate the defense saying is that prosecutors did not prove that the time of death is 8:49 p.m. Prosecutors only proved that the time of death occurred sometime after that video and sometime before 10:10 p.m. And that's where his testimony is a calculated risk. To the extent that the defense can raise that as reasonable doubt and say prosecutors did not prove time of death, then somebody on the jury who said, look, I think he's a liar, I think he's a cheat, but I don't think he's a cold-blooded killer, might be more likely to adopt that defense perspective. But if the jury does adopt the prosecutor's time of death, then there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He will be convicted, because simply no one else could have come in and committed that crime during that time frame.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation in your cable lineup. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-based, unbiased coverage.